Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy, and joining me this, well, I was going to say bright and shiny morning, but it's not so shiny. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, so we're going to continue our little journey going one by one through the gates and the gene keys. So today, the card that you chose yesterday must have been gate 61, which is the gate of
Correct.
mystery. It sounds so
Yes.
ominous, doesn't it? Ooh.
Well, I think really that depends on the mood you're in. Some usually mystery sounds to me quite fascinating, quite amazing.
Playful. Yeah. So
Um,
what can you tell us about this gate 61 and like where is it located?
it's located up in the head, and it is the individual. It is an individual activation within the function, which is the head of inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
The head puts pressure on us to engage with life in a it's sort of it catalyzes our thought processes. And so we've got the three thought processes catalyzed by gate 64, which is confusion, which catalyzes the religious stream of thought, making sense out of life. And we have doubt, gate 63, which catalyzes the logical part of our brain, which seeks patterns, the patterns to seek and know the patterns that underlie nature. But the 61 is about direct knowing. So it catalyzes, it's a mental pressure to resolve what is unknown in life. And along with it is the potential for a mutative inspiration, which brings lasting impact to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it is the gate of the thinker. If you think of Rodin, I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening to my voice right now, but if you think of Rodin and the sculptor of the thinker, that makes
Mm-hmm.
me think of this gate of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
um,
It's kind of
but
like the person who contemplates all the time, who's always thinking, right? Like makes me think of like philosophers like Plato and stuff.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so it's about engaging with that sense of what's unknown, but also acknowledging it at some point that there are certain things that are unknowable.
Mm-hmm.
So it is part of what a channel called the channel of awareness, the design of a thinker.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is the person whose thought process is not really trackable by the rest of us,
Mm-hmm.
because they just know things.
Well, it's like,
And
but they also ask questions. Like I was looking at the people who have this gate, and I was like, they ask questions that I never would have thought to ask. Like just the
mhm,
way that their thought process and the way that they think, right? So
yes.
yeah.
So this gate is associated, and that a fun word for one fun word for it might be the divine door.
Oh.
This
Mhm.
is the gate into mystery, to seeking, to inner truth, to mysticism. So when we think of mystics,
Mhm.
if we were to think of one gate that would most go along with that, it would be this one.
Mhm.
So they have that pressure to know, to try and unravel the mystery.
Mhm.
Um, and they like the silence because it's often in the gap between thoughts. That's often where the satori happens, the
Mhm.
moment, the eureka, the moment of
Inspiration drops in. Mhm.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. So, I mean, this particular gate has a lot. Its lines have really interesting keynotes. Like the
Mhm.
first, the first line is called occult knowledge. The
Mhm.
second, natural brilliance. And I mean, wow. If I were, I'm having I joke about gate envy or line envy. It's like, oh, wouldn't that be cool to have the gate of occult knowledge? That's with the gate 61 with the line of occult knowledge. Wouldn't that be cool?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then the third line is interdependence, and then and then research, and then influence, and then appeal. Those are its names, which just points out again that every gate has at least 6 flavors on how it's lived out and expressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does the gene key have to say about 61?
Well, here we have an interesting one. The shadow is called psychosis. And what it points to is that when we get obsessed with the questions in our, when we get obsessed with the question of why this, why that, why did Trump win?
Yeah.
When we get obsessed with why, it keeps us, it creates a barrier between us and reality. So this is the one that points out to us that we all live in a distorted reality because we're not experiencing reality. We're experiencing the questions and the internal dialogue that arise in relationship to our questions.
So is it always like question, answer, and then the universe is trying to bring you the answers to your questions when you're asking them?
Well, I don't think it's quite like that. I think it's, I think the questions that somehow become important to us are at least partly conditioned in us. And those conditioning causes us to experience life through the filter of the question rather than seeing life as it is. So if life is trying to deliver us answers, we can't see those answers because we're obsessed with the question.
Well, yeah, I just think about what our mentor Ren was talking about, how she says that people forget the question that they asked, and therefore they don't see the answer because they forgot the question, right?
Well, that could be part of it too. But I mean, I've had very clear experiences of how my obsession with questions sort of kept me from seeing life as it is. And I know that, in the Toltec tradition, there is something, the language of the Toltecs talk about stopping the internal dialogue. Because, and almost, pretty much 99.9% of us are always, of us humans are trapped in the internal dialogue of our minds. And that keeps us from actually engaging directly with the mystery of life. But spiritual traditions point to a place that you can get to where that inner dialogue stops, which is a very, that's quite the accomplishment, but most of us don't get there. And that's when we would have I think that's what we're pointing to. The psychosis, the distortion of our internal dialogue is so pervasive that we don't even recognize that we are psychotic. But I mean, the hope is that, we have those moments that take us out of that, and inspiration is the gift that arises here. Where instead of worshiping a God outside of us, we start to realize that we are becoming God, or we are becoming what God wants us to be, and therefore growing in attunement to God. So the inspiration happens when we begin to let loosen, when the grip of our mental constructs begin to have, we begin to win free of the grip of those constructs. It's kind of, we begin to look through the matrix, so to speak,
and see the truth of who we are.
Yes. And, inspiration, when it hits us, is more than simply a heightened experience. It's
Mhm.
actually something that leaves us permanently altered.
Mhm.
So, as 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 Rudd says, this is a direct quote: "Creativity is the single most important gift for drawing humanity out of its mass psychosis." So when we allow ourselves to drop our preconceptions and our mental constructs, then we leave space for inspiration, and that inspiration can radically transform our thought processes,
Mhm.
and lead us away from psychosis.
Mhm.
Um, and that's when we start to participate. He talks about Christ consciousness here
Mhm.
as part, as a kind of an energy that takes us out of the psychosis,
Mhm.
where we start to feel like maybe we are co-participants in a creative evolutionary process that is
Mhm.
taking us closer towards God and closer towards how God intended for us to be.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what the teachings are, right? You know, it's
Yeah.
it's to be more Christ-like, or be, one with God, or one with all that is, right? The universe, see everything, right?
Yes. And of course, on the way to that, becoming ever more expressive in
Mhm.
our own lives of God's intent for us when He created us.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hmm. And the final stage is sanctity.
Mhm.
Another word for that, which is holiness. And so he talks here about this, the field of this city being about a huge pregnant silence.
Pregnant
Um,
pause, Selah.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. If
Yeah.
it correlates to what our teacher talks about as Selah
Mhm.
in the Bible, which is that
Mhm.
pregnant pause.
Mhm.
Um, and it could be symbolized as the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy of Holies.
Mhm.
It's that space of, yeah.
Mhm. The Holy Grail, right? Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And really, it has a lot to do with frequency.
Mhm.
Um, it's like if we open to the higher frequencies, then our experience of life changes.
Mhm.
And this one, I mean, you're saying, "Oh God, what is he talking about?" I'm not even sure what I'm talking about because I'm not in that state. Our
Mhm.
words are pointing to it, but they can
Mhm.
never replicate it.
Mhm.
So, I mean, this is a state apparently which feels simultaneously empty and endlessly full, where
Mhm.
all questions of why cease to exist.
And just
So,
accepting things as they are,
yeah,
and
yeah,
living in what they talk about, living in the flow, or living, you know, just being, right? In a state of being. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, God bless Richard Rudd for seeking to give us a vocabulary for all these states. I mean,
Mhm.
64 states of enlightenment, it's quite the thing to grapple with.
Mhm. It's a
But
lot
if
of
you,
information.
it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you happen to have Gate 61, any of our listeners, there might be a place for this to land even
Mhm.
deeper for you.
Well,
Um,
when I look at the list of names that you've put on here, like I was saying, I can see how that plays out in them, like especially
mhm.
people that we're really close to. And then you also noted the store, Clair-i-tea, right? And how it's associated with the line one is occultism, right? So it's like, yeah, well, that's what we do here, right?
Mhm.
We look at the mystical side of things, right? Mhm.
Yes. Yes. Um, but yeah, I think the people with this do have a sense of sometimes tapping into a knowingness that is very mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
And you sense that I sense that capacity in them
Mm-hmm.
and appreciate it and just enjoys being catalyzed by that in whatever way
Yeah, I just
happens.
like that they ask the questions that I never thought to ask too. So you get information that you didn't know to ask for, right?
Mm,
So
okay.
that's what I enjoy about being around them. Like one of them I'm really good friends with. And I mean, that's what I enjoy when we have our conversations and stuff. Like there's areas that or things that he thinks about that didn't even cross my mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a pretty cool one, I think, gate 61.
Mhm.
Part of the individual circuitry leading us towards mutations in our thinking. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you want to say about it before you wrap up and we talk about your new group that we have going on?
No, nothing else about gate 61.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are we get to dance and play with these kind of ideas in the group that we're
Mhm.
conducting. I'm conducting once a month, where we talk about the gene keys. We talk about elements of human design, and we talk about how your and my relationship to it and what we see unfolding in the world around us.
Mhm.
So I'd like to invite anybody who's interested, who has some familiarity with human design, to come along and be part of that.
Mhm.
And I think that it will accelerate people's understanding of human design. Not just that, but more importantly, your understanding of yourself
Yeah. And other.
and the people around you.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really, I think that's the other thing. Oh, you have epiphanies about the people around you and you start to have more understanding of why they are the way that they are, right? And it
Yeah.
allows you to be more accepting, I think. That's how I feel about it. But yeah. All right. Well, with that, we'll say goodbye. God bless. And we look forward to the next gate next week. Have a good day, everybody. God bless.